Before you became who the world told you to be, before the roles, the expectations, the striving, there was a deeper truth, a quiet knowing, a presence, a being. This is not a journey of becoming more. It's a return to what's always been here. Being before becoming is an invitation to pause the performance and rediscover the power of presence, to soften into the space beneath the doing, to reconnect with the you that exists before the story. This is not a path of adding. It is a path of remembering, of stripping away the noise and resting in the simplicity of your own breath, your own body, your own essence. You don't have to earn this. You don't have to strive for it. You only have to allow it. Let these words meet you where you are. Let them guide you back, not to something new, but to something real, something ancient, something true. Let yourself remember, you are not here to perform. You are here to be. Chapter 1. Before the striving, before the lists, before the pressure, before the question, am I doing enough? There was breath, there was being, there was you. You arrived into this world complete, not defined by credentials or accomplishments, not measured by productivity or potential, simply whole, just as you were. Soft, unfiltered presence, wrapped in skin and breath and trust. You didn't need to do anything to belong. You were belonging. And then slowly, without realizing it, you were introduced to a different rhythm. You learned to reach, to perform, to meet the moment not as you were, but as you were expected to be. You learned to hustle for worth, to equate effort with value, to associate stillness with laziness and rest with guilt. This shift didn't happen all at once. It crept in, quietly. A reward here, a correction there, a glance when you succeeded, a withdrawal when you slowed down. Over time, striving became familiar. It became a language you thought you had to speak to be seen, but it came at a cost. It cost you your breath. It cost you your pace. It cost you your relationship with the now. You were told to always be improving, becoming, growing. And while growth is natural, essential even, it was never meant to replace your being. Becoming was never meant to override your presence. Because before the striving, there was something else. There was the moment, the body, the ground beneath your feet, the rhythm of your inhale and the letting go of your exhale. There was silence, spaciousness, a deeper intelligence moving through you, guiding without words, stabilizing without effort. You may have forgotten this for a while. Most of us do. We get pulled into systems that prize the visible over the invisible, that reward the measurable and dismiss the felt. And so we adapt. We shapeshift. We squeeze ourselves into timelines and titles and expectations that never quite fit. But the good news is this. Being doesn't leave you. It waits. It waits in the breath you forget to take, in the tension you carry in your shoulders, in the quiet ache of exhaustion after one more day of trying to keep up. It waits in the stillness, just beneath the surface of your speed. And when you finally pause long enough to feel it, to actually listen, something ancient in you exhales, something remembers, not because you've achieved stillness, but because you stopped chasing for long enough to feel that it was already there. This is the invitation, not to abandon growth, but to anchor it in presence, to stop outsourcing your worth to what you produce, to stop performing your value and start embodying your truth. You are not a machine. You are not a brand. You are not a self-improvement project. You are a living, breathing presence, sacred, messy, dynamic, whole. There's nothing wrong with goals, with evolution, with change. But when those things are built on the belief that who you are now isn't enough, they become a mask, a distraction, a never-ending loop of almost happy, almost healed, almost worthy. You don't need to become anything to be valuable. You already are. What if your value wasn't based on how much you do, but how deeply you live? What if the most radical act wasn't speeding up but slowing down, not to fall behind, but to come back to yourself? Try it now. Let your spine soften. Drop your awareness into your body, not to analyze or fix, just to feel. Breathe, not to get somewhere, just to breathe. Let this moment be enough. Let yourself be enough. This is not indulgent. This is revolutionary. Because in a world constantly demanding more, choosing to be is an act of rebellion, a quiet, powerful return to truth. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are right here. And here is where life lives. So let yourself arrive. Again, and again, and again. Not with force, not with shame, not with an agenda. With breath, with presence, with a willingness to meet yourself, not as a problem to solve, but as a home to return to. Because before the striving, there was you, and you were already whole. Chapter 2. The Lie of More. There is a story the world tells us from the moment we can understand language, that more is better, that we must constantly upgrade, advance, acquire, and improve. That stillness is laziness, that contentment is complacency, and that worth is always earned, never inherent. This is the lie of more, seductive, convincing, well-dressed in ambition and wrapped in applause. It sounds like this: if I just do more, I'll finally feel enough. If I just become more successful, more productive, more disciplined, then I'll be free. If I just push harder, I'll finally arrive at peace. But peace is not found at the top of a mountain built on exhaustion. Freedom is not hidden at the bottom of an endless to-do list. The truth is quieter. It whispers, what if you don't need more? What if you need less? Less noise, less pretending, less pressure to perform. We are conditioned to believe that we are not whole until we've achieved something, that our worth must be proven, earned, measured in output or likes or letters after our name. We're rewarded for how fast we move, how busy we stay, how much we produce, even if what we're producing costs us our peace, our health, our presence. And the tragedy is not just the exhaustion. The tragedy is how easily we forget that our value has nothing to do with our pace. The obsession with more begins early. We're taught to reach, to perform, to win. We learn that validation lives outside of us, that satisfaction is always ahead, never here, never now. And so we run, faster, harder, until one day we forget what we were even running toward. What if the very thing we're chasing is what's being lost in the chase? You've been told that if you slow down, you'll fall behind. But behind what? Behind who? And where exactly is the finish line? There is no finish line in a race designed by fear. The lie of more tells us to constantly shapeshift to fit the mold, to hustle for love, to overachieve for belonging, to stay busy enough that we never have to feel the ache of our own disconnection. But what if we stopped? Not forever, not dramatically, just long enough to ask, is this mine? Is this true? Is this how I want to live? Because the moment you pause, the lie begins to unravel. You start to feel the fatigue you've been outrunning. You start to hear the quiet voice that got drowned out by noise. You start to notice that much of what you've been striving for hasn't actually brought you closer to yourself. It's taken you further away. The question isn't whether growth is wrong. Growth is natural. The question is, what is fueling your growth? Is it fear or presence? Shame or love? Lack or wholeness? Growth rooted in fear is frantic. It consumes. It never feels done. But growth rooted in presence is steady. It's wise. It expands without disconnecting. It strengthens without straining. The truth is, your being is enough. Right now, not once you hit the next milestone, not once you fix the next flaw, but now, in your breath, in your body, in this exact version of you. Enough doesn't mean you never evolve. It means your evolution isn't a requirement for worth. It's a natural unfolding of something already whole. And when you start from wholeness, everything changes. You work from love, not for it. You rest without guilt. You move through life not trying to prove yourself, but simply to express yourself. This is not passivity. This is power. The kind that doesn't need to shout or shine or prove. Because presence is power. You don't need to do more to be seen. You don't need to know more to be wise. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of your own life. The antidote to the lie of more is enough. Not as a performance, not as a temporary affirmation, but as a lived truth. So take a breath. Feel your body. Notice the part of you that is tired of running. Let that part rest. Let the mask drop. Let the striving soften. Let the moment hold you, just as you are. You may be surprised to find that what you were chasing out there has been waiting in here all along. The lie of more cannot survive in presence, because presence reveals what was never missing. And what was never missing is you. Chapter 3. The Pause That Heals. In a world built on urgency, pausing feels like rebellion. We are taught to keep moving, to fix, to solve, to keep the momentum going at any cost. Pausing is seen as a threat to progress, a disruption to the forward march of achievement. But in truth, the pause is not a detour. It is the doorway. It is the space where truth reemerges, where clarity returns, where the body, mind, and soul begin to speak the same language again. The pause is where healing begins. Most of us are moving so quickly, we don't realize we're no longer here. Our minds race ahead. Our bodies tense in anticipation of the next thing. And our breath barely reaches the bottom of our lungs. We are alive, but not present. We are functioning, but not feeling. We are surviving, but not listening. And when we're not listening, we miss the signals. The whisper in the chest that says, slow down. The ache in the belly that says, something's not aligned. The tightness in the throat that says, there's something unspoken here. But those signals don't disappear. They store in our tissues, in our breath, in our nervous systems. They build until they become symptoms: fatigue, tension, anxiety, disconnection. And then we try to treat the symptoms, not realizing they were messages all along. The body is wise, but it speaks in silence. And to hear it, we must pause. The pause doesn't need to be long. It only needs to be real. A moment of attention without agenda. A breath without effort. A space where nothing needs to be achieved. Try it now. Stop reading, just for a few seconds. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body. Feel your breath move in and out without trying to change it. Feel the stillness underneath the noise. This is it. This is the pause. Simple, subtle, sacred. In the pause, the nervous system recalibrates. The mind begins to slow. The heart starts to whisper again. It is in this space that the truth of the moment can rise, not as a thought, but as a knowing. And often, the knowing is quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't shout. It just is. Most people avoid the pause because they're afraid of what they'll feel. Grief, anger, loneliness. But those emotions are not enemies. They're visitors, messengers, echoes of parts of you that haven't been fully seen. And when you pause and meet them with breath, you don't drown in them. You integrate them. Pausing is not passive. It's active surrender. It's choosing presence over panic, awareness over autopilot. The world won't teach you how to pause. It will applaud your hustle. It will reward your productivity. But your body, your soul, they crave something else. They crave rhythm, cycles, a breath in and a breath out, an inhale of life and an exhale of letting go. The pause is the exhale. It's the moment you say, I don't need to push right now. I need to listen. And in that listening, things begin to reorganize. You begin to remember what matters. You begin to notice what you've been avoiding. You begin to see what is already working, even if it's not perfect. So many breakthroughs happen in the pause, not through force, through stillness, through allowing, through the soft, steady return to this moment. You may not always understand what's being revealed. That's okay. Understanding is the mind's job, but the body doesn't speak in explanations. It speaks in sensations, and the pause is where you learn that language. A heaviness in the chest may say, you've been holding too much. A flutter in the belly may say, there's something exciting here. A lump in the throat may say, there's something you need to speak. You don't need to decode it all. You only need to honor it. Because when you pause, you're not just stopping movement. You're creating space. Space for the self to arrive. Space for truth to rise. Space for breath to deepen. Space for healing to begin. Not through effort, but through presence. The pause doesn't promise comfort. It promises contact. Contact with what's real. With what's alive. With what's waiting to be felt. Not fixed. If you can learn to pause, even for 30 seconds, you begin to create a new pattern. One where your worth isn't based on how much you do. One where your body is not a machine to be pushed, but a compass to be trusted. One where silence is not empty, but full of wisdom. So pause. Pause before you answer. Pause before you react. Pause before you decide. Pause before you keep going, just because it's what you've always done. In that sacred space between the inhale and the exhale, there is room to choose something different. There is room to come back to your breath, back to your body, back to what's true beneath the noise. The pause will not solve everything, but it will reveal what you've been ignoring. And in that revelation, the first step of healing is already underway. So give yourself that moment, that breath, that return. Because the pause is not the opposite of progress. It is the beginning of real, grounded, embodied change. Chapter 4. Listening for the quiet. Yes, there is a voice within you, not loud, not demanding, not competing with the noise of the world. It is quiet, gentle, often overlooked, but it is constant, waiting for space, for silence, for your attention. This voice is your truth, your inner knowing, your quiet yes. You've likely heard it before, in those small gut-level tugs. The pull to leave a room or to stay. The soft urge to say no, even when yes would please others. The sensation in your chest when something feels right, even if it doesn't make logical sense. But in a world that glorifies speed, noise, and certainty, the quiet yes often gets drowned out. We're trained to override our bodies, to explain away our intuition, to defer to logic, approval, or habit. So we don't listen. We fill the silence with tasks. We numb the discomfort with distractions. We second-guess ourselves into paralysis. And in doing so, we disconnect from the very intelligence that knows exactly what we need. The quiet yes isn't dramatic. It doesn't argue or convince. It won't fight for your attention. It waits patiently, not in your thoughts, but in your sensations. It lives in your breath, in your heartbeat, in your tension and your ease. It speaks through your body before it ever forms into words. You know it by how it feels: grounded, warm, open, expansive. Not without fear, but beneath the fear, there is a knowing. Not always convenient, but always aligned. To begin listening again, you don't need a new belief system. You need presence. You need breath. You need a willingness to pause long enough to feel what's actually true, rather than what you've been conditioned to believe. Start small. Ask yourself simple questions and feel the response. Not in your mind, but in your body. Do I want to say yes to this invitation? Does this choice bring me closer to myself or further away? Is this my truth or someone else's? The body always answers. Sometimes in subtle cues, a softening in the shoulders, a lightness in the belly, a quiet peace. Other times in sharp discomfort, a clenching jaw, a tight chest, a nervous flutter. Don't analyze it. Feel it. The quiet yes doesn't need explanation. It doesn't need permission. It simply needs to be honored. This is not the same as impulsivity. Impulse is reactive. The quiet yes is responsive. Impulse is driven by emotion. The quiet yes rises from presence. Sometimes, the quiet yes will ask you to do the hard thing. Leave the relationship, end the project, take the leap, speak the truth. Sometimes it will ask you to stay, even when you're afraid. Sometimes it will ask you to wait, to do nothing but breathe. Listening is not about getting it perfect. You'll miss it sometimes. You'll override it. You'll confuse fear for truth or people-pleasing for wisdom. That's okay. Every moment is a chance to return. Each time you ignore the quiet yes, your body will let you know. It will tighten. It will ache. It will grow louder until you finally remember to listen. But each time you honor the quiet yes, something in you strengthens. Your sense of self becomes clearer. Your decisions more aligned. Your energy more coherent. And over time, you begin to live from that place. From within, not dictated by what others expect, but guided by what you know. This is what it means to live in integrity. Not moral superiority, but inner congruence. Your words match your knowing. Your actions match your values. Your life matches your truth. You are not here to follow someone else's map. You are here to remember your own compass. The quiet yes is that compass. It may lead you off the beaten path. It may confuse the people around you. It may not always offer comfort, but it will always offer truth. And in a world that constantly asks you to betray yourself in exchange for acceptance, choosing your quiet yes is a sacred act of self-respect. So listen. Beneath the noise, beneath the programming, beneath the fear, there is something inside you that knows. It has always known, and it's waiting, patiently, lovingly, for you to trust it again. Let this be the moment you do. Chapter 5. The body remembers. Your body is more than skin and structure. It is more than a tool to carry your mind from one task to the next. It is more than an image to shape or a vessel to manage. Your body is a living archive. It holds everything you've lived through. Every sensation, every wound, every joy, every breath. It remembers. Before the mind has words, the body has sensation. Before you could understand what was happening around you, your body felt it. It responded to the tone in a voice, the tension in a room, the presence or absence of safety. Long Before logic developed, the nervous system was shaping itself in response to your environment. This is why certain things still stir you. A smell, a sound, a subtle glance. The body remembers. And often, what we call overreaction or being too sensitive is actually the body signaling something unresolved. Not to punish us, not to shame us, but to invite us into deeper listening, deeper honoring, deeper truth. Yet most of us were never taught how to listen to the body. We were taught to override it, to numb it, to power through pain, to ignore the exhaustion, to silence the discomfort, to treat rest as weakness and stillness as unproductive. But the body doesn't forget what the mind dismisses. It carries it. In the jaw that clenches without warning, in the shoulders that rise to protect, in the stomach that knots before a conversation, in the chest that tightens in moments of vulnerability. These aren't malfunctions, they are messages. And when you begin to listen, truly listen, healing begins. Not through analyzing, not through fixing, but through presence. The body doesn't need you to solve it. It needs you to feel it, to breathe into it, to stop judging it, to return to it. Because healing doesn't happen through force. It happens through safety. And safety begins with awareness. The kind that says, I am here. I feel you. I'm not leaving. That's what the body has been waiting for all along. Your presence, your breath, your willingness to stay. When you meet your body with curiosity instead of critique, it softens. When you choose to breathe into the pain instead of pushing past it, something opens. Something unwinds. Something that was holding its breath begins to exhale. This is the wisdom of the body. It holds your truth not in words, but in rhythm. Not in analysis, but in sensation. That tightness you feel. It may be grief, or unspoken truth, or a boundary you haven't honored. That fatigue you carry. It may be years of running from yourself. That restlessness, a call to come back to your own skin, your own breath, your own pace. The body is not the enemy. It is the home, and your healing will not be found in escaping it, but in returning to it. This return is not a single event. It is a practice, a commitment, a sacred remembering that presence isn't found by leaving the body. It's found by inhabiting it. So begin simply. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the weight of your hips in the chair. Notice how your breath moves, not to change it, just to witness. Scan slowly. Where is there tension? Where is there ease? Where do you feel dull? Where do you feel alive? No judgment, just observation. The more you learn to live in your body instead of over it, the more life becomes available. Joy is embodied. Love is embodied. Truth is embodied. Everything you long for isn't found through detachment. It's found through deeper intimacy with the self. The body is not an obstacle to your becoming. It is the bridge. And when you build a relationship with your body, not based on control, but based on care, you will begin to feel a wholeness that can't be found in thought alone. This is not about perfection. You will still tighten. You will still disconnect. But now, you'll know the way back. Back to your body. Back to the moment. Back to the breath. Because your body has never stopped trying to bring you home. And it always remembers the way. Chapter 6. Choosing stillness. Stillness is a word often misunderstood. To many, it suggests inactivity, stagnation, or a lack of ambition. But true stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the presence of depth. It is not about doing nothing. It is about being with everything without needing to fix, control, or flee from it. Stillness is a sacred space, a homecoming. It is the quiet beneath the noise, the calm beneath the reaction, the awareness beneath the emotion. And though it is always available, it often feels unreachable because the world we live in rarely honors it. We are trained to chase, to stay in motion, to solve every discomfort with a solution, to earn rest, to treat silence as a void that must be filled. And so we build lives on top of noise, constant input, constant stimulation, constant doing. But underneath all of that, something in you craves stillness, not as an escape, but as a return. Stillness is not a luxury. It is a necessity, a deep human need, just like movement, just like expression, just like connection. It is the moment when the body exhales, the mind softens, and the soul becomes audible again. Stillness is where you remember that you are not your thoughts. You are the witness of your thoughts. You are not your tension. You are the space in which that tension is felt. You are not your schedule. You are the awareness that moves through time, not the time itself. And yet, choosing stillness can feel terrifying. Why? Because when you stop moving, you feel, you hear, you meet yourself. And sometimes that self carries grief, or fear, or regret, or the echo of a question you've been avoiding. Stillness brings all of it forward, not to overwhelm you, but to free you, to clear out what's been stored in the silence, to bring breath to the spaces that have gone without it, to remind you that you are strong enough to feel without running away. It doesn't take hours, just a few breaths. Just one pause where you stop trying to manage everything and instead allow yourself to be with what's real. Try this now. Close your eyes. Let the breath be easy. Let the body rest. Let your attention soften like water pooling into the present moment. Feel what arises. No need to label. No need to change. Just be with it. This is stillness. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of attachment. It's not a blank mind. It's a spacious one. It doesn't mean you won't feel discomfort. It means you won't resist it the same way. You won't identify with it. You won't become consumed by the movement of your own mind. Stillness gives you space to respond instead of react, to feel instead of flee, to remember instead of strive. It's the foundation of all clarity. Without it, decisions are reactive. With it, choices emerge from alignment. And no, you don't have to retreat to a mountain or meditate for hours to find it. Stillness can be found in small moments, between the inhale and exhale, in the pause before speaking, in the quiet way you take your tea. Stillness is not about isolating from life. It's about entering life more fully, because you're no longer being dragged by the current of urgency. It's here that you reconnect to rhythm, your true rhythm, not the one imposed by productivity or pressure. And in that rhythm, you begin to move differently. You speak more clearly. You rest more deeply. You create more truthfully. Stillness is not disconnection. It's deeper connection, to breath, to body, to being. There will always be noise, always be demands. But you get to choose what leads you. You can meet the noise with presence. You can choose to return to your breath again and again, not as a discipline, but as a devotion. Stillness is a kind of intimacy. It says, I'm willing to be here, fully, even when it's uncomfortable, even when I don't have the answers, even when I would rather escape. Choosing stillness is choosing self-trust, because in stillness, you no longer need external cues to guide your next step. You listen. You feel. You allow the clarity to rise from within, in its own time, in its own way. It might not be what you expected. It might not make sense to anyone else. But it will feel true, and that truth is what brings peace. Not because Everything outside is perfect. But because inside, you are no longer at war. So, make space for stillness. Not someday, but now. In the pause between tasks. In the breath before sleep. In the decision to stay with yourself instead of reaching for distraction. Because stillness is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. Chapter 7. Making space for what's true. Truth does not arrive through force. It does not shout above the noise. It waits, quietly, patiently, for space, for stillness, for your willingness to listen. Not with your mind alone, but with your whole body. And yet, most of us move through life with no space at all. We fill our days with tasks, our minds with noise, our hearts with other people's stories. We rush from one thing to the next, accumulating information, expectations, obligations. We keep everything going, just barely, hoping that clarity will somehow rise through the chaos. But truth doesn't bloom in chaos. It blooms in space. Space is not emptiness. It's receptivity. Spaciousness is not lack. It's possibility. Without space, your truth can't breathe. Your intuition can't speak. Your body can't rest. Your life becomes a constant reaction, rather than a conscious creation. Making space isn't about walking away from your life. It's about coming back to it with new awareness, with fewer distractions and more intention. It's not about throwing everything out. It's about asking what no longer belongs. What story? What pattern? What relationship? What belief have I outgrown? What am I holding on to out of habit, out of fear, out of guilt? What in my life is filling space that could be held for something truer, something quieter, something more aligned? We often think of space in terms of physical clutter. And yes, clearing your environment can support the nervous system. A messy space can mirror a cluttered mind. But the deeper work of making space happens inside. It happens in the moment you stop saying yes out of obligation. It happens in the breath you take before reacting. It happens when you choose to pause, rather than fill every gap with scrolling, noise, or another to-do. Because space doesn't just open, you create it, moment by moment, breath by breath. You create it when you resist the urge to over-explain, when you say no without guilt, when you sit in silence instead of rushing to fill it. And in that space, truth begins to rise. It might not come as a full sentence. It might arrive as a sensation, a quiet knowing, a subtle shift in energy. But it's there, waiting for your attention. This is why slowing down can feel uncomfortable at first. Because when the noise fades, what's underneath becomes clear, and what's clear is not always what we want to see. Sometimes truth shows us a relationship that no longer fits. Sometimes it reveals a dream that isn't ours. Sometimes it points us toward rest when we're addicted to doing. But truth is never cruel. It may challenge you. It may ask you to let go of what is familiar, but it will always lead you back to yourself. Making space for truth is an act of courage. It asks you to trust that you don't need to fill every second, that your value isn't tied to your productivity. That clarity doesn't come from doing more, but from doing less, more intentionally, more aligned, more honestly. You begin to realize that presence is not what happens after you clean up your life. Presence is what cleans it. By being with what is, you begin to see what's no longer needed. You begin to sense what wants to emerge. You begin to trust that your life is not something to be constantly managed. It is something to be felt, honored, lived. Creating space for what's true is not a one-time event. It's a daily choice to let the breath be deeper, to let the silence be longer, to let the pause be sacred, to let your truth be more important than your performance. And every time you choose space over noise, presence over pressure, truth over image, You come home. Home to yourself. Home to your body. Home to what matters. You begin to move through the world less distracted, more anchored, less reactive, more responsive, less consumed, more clear. This is how life begins to reorganize, not through hustle, but through space. Space to feel, space to see, space to know. And when you make space for what's true, everything that is no longer aligned begins to fall away. Not because you forced it, but because it no longer fits. So, make space. Not because something is missing, but because something real is waiting to be felt. Chapter 8. Living from Enough. We live in a culture built on the myth of insufficiency. The idea that who you are, what you have, and how you feel is never quite enough. You're told you should want more, do more, be more. That there's always another level to reach, another version of you to unlock, another flaw to fix. But what if none of that striving is necessary? What if enough is not a destination, but a place you can live from? Right here, right now. Living from enough doesn't mean giving up on growth. It means redefining what growth is. It means releasing the belief that you have to suffer or strive to be worthy of peace, that your right to joy must be earned, that love is something you need to chase. Enough is a radical stance in a world that thrives on your insecurity. It says, I am already whole, even as I grow. I am already valuable, even as I evolve. This is not about settling. It's about rooting. Rooting yourself in something stable. Something that doesn't rise and fall based on how much you achieve or how well you're liked. It's about shifting your internal reference point from external validation to internal knowing. Living from enough doesn't mean you won't ever feel self-doubt. It means you no longer believe it the same way. You hear the voice of not enoughness and meet it with presence, not panic, with curiosity, not collapse. That voice might still say, you should be further along. You're not doing it right. You're falling behind. And instead of arguing, you can respond gently. I see you. I hear you. And I choose not to follow you today. This is the power of awareness. Not to silence the inner critic, but to stop identifying with it. You begin to understand that enoughness is not a feeling you achieve through perfection. It's a reality you return to when you stop abandoning yourself. Enough is not a mood, it's a foundation. You can live from enough and still feel grief. You can live from enough and still want change. You can live from enough and still make mistakes. But none of those things shake your root. Because your worth isn't dependent on conditions. It's inherent. This shift from striving to sufficiency changes everything. You stop comparing your path to someone else's. You stop measuring your worth by your productivity. You stop chasing a life you think you should have and start living the one that's here. You begin to listen to your body, not as an obstacle, but as an oracle. You begin to trust your pace, even when it's slower than the world around you. You begin to celebrate your choices, not because they're perfect, but because they're true. Living from enough doesn't mean every day is easy, but it does mean that even on the hard days, you are held. You are here. You are whole. From this place, effort becomes expression, not proof. Creativity flows more freely because it's not bound by fear. Relationships deepen because you're no longer trying to perform. Boundaries become clearer because you know what you're protecting. Joy becomes more available because you're no longer postponing it until after you've earned it. Even rest becomes sacred, not as a reward, but as a rhythm. This is what living from enough offers. A return to a life that's not constantly trying to fix itself, but one that's lived with attention, presence, and trust. You don't have to keep up. You don't have to be impressive. You don't have to win the invisible race. You are already in the right place, because you are here, and here is where your life is happening. So, the next time the voice of scarcity rises, the one that says you're too much or not enough, too late or too slow, pause. Come back to the breath. Come back to the body. Come back to the knowing that you don't need to become enough. You already are. And when you live from that truth, even for a moment, everything begins to reorganize around it. Not because the world changes, but because you have. And that changes everything. Chapter 9. Wholeness was never lost. There is a part of you that has never been broken, never been confused, never been uncertain about who you are. You may have forgotten it, buried it under years of programming, pain, and pressure, but it's never left. This part of you is whole, not because it's perfect, but because it's true. And truth, even when hidden, doesn't disappear. It waits, quietly, steadily, unshaken by the masks you've worn or the stories you've carried. We often speak of healing as if it's a process of collecting the missing pieces of ourselves, as if we are scattered, incomplete, fragmented. But what if healing isn't about adding anything at all? What if it's about remembering that wholeness was never lost, only obscured? This isn't about denying your pain. Your story matters. The wounds are real. The grief is valid. But beneath all of that lives a presence that was never harmed. A self that existed before the trauma and continues to exist through it. That self is not something you need to find. It's something you need to feel. Feel it in the stillness. Feel it in the breath. Feel it in the soft recognition that you are not a problem to solve, but a presence to remember. We live in a culture that conditions us to feel incomplete. Every advertisement, every expectation, every comparison is a subtle whisper. You are not enough yet. But you could be, if you buy this, if you master that, if you prove something. But this is a lie that profits from your disconnection. Wholeness doesn't sell well, because when you know you are whole, you stop grasping. You stop performing. You stop living for validation and begin living from alignment. And nothing is more powerful than that. To live from wholeness is to stop asking permission to be yourself. It's to stop waiting to be ready. It's to stop trying to earn a seat at the table and realize the table lives inside you. Wholeness means you no longer abandon parts of yourself to make others comfortable. You no longer shrink to fit roles that don't reflect your truth. You no longer hustle to be seen, because you've remembered that you are the one who must see you first. This return doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single aha moment. It's a practice. One breath at a time. One truth at a time. One moment of presence after another. And sometimes, the most profound act of self-love is to simply pause and say, I am not broken. I am not late. I am not too much. I am not enough. I am here. And I am whole. It may feel unfamiliar at first, like wearing a new skin. But over time, this truth becomes your ground, your anchor, your home. You'll begin to notice that even when challenges arise, and they will, you don't spiral in the same way. You don't collapse into shame. You don't outsource your worth to someone else's opinion. Instead, you return to breath, to body, to being. This is your sanctuary. The part of you that knows, that remembers, that holds you steady even when the world shakes. And from this place of wholeness, you begin to live differently. You love without losing yourself. You rest without guilt. You speak with more honesty and less apology. You make decisions that may not please everyone, but they honor you. You stop trying to heal yourself as if you are a project. You start walking with yourself as if you are a beloved. You realize that what you were trying to fix was never broken. It was buried beneath years of conditioning, beneath roles and masks and survival strategies. There was always something untouched, untamed, unshaken. That part of you is still here, and it's not asking for more effort. It's asking for your attention. So, let this be the chapter where you stop chasing wholeness and start embodying it. Let this be the breath where you remember. You do not need to be more. You do not need to be different. You do not need to wait for permission. You are already here, already worthy, already whole. And that, not perfection, not performance, not approval, is the truth you've been waiting to live. Chapter 10. The Way Home. Home is not a place. It is not a destination you arrive at when everything in your life is finally in order. It is not a version of yourself you must become. Home is a presence, a quiet return to what has always lived inside you. The way home is not forward or backward. It is inward. It begins the moment you stop reaching, stop performing, and simply allow yourself to be as you are, without the mask, without the script, without the noise. Coming home is not something you do once. It is something you practice again and again, each time you choose presence over performance, breath over busyness, enough over never enough. You may have spent years trying to fix yourself, trying to perfect, improve, edit, and polish your way to worthiness. But what if you were never broken? What if the way home was not paved with achievement, but with softness? Softening into your breath, softening into your truth, softening into the parts of you that once felt like too much. The way home is not always comfortable. It will ask you to slow down when the world tells you to hurry. It will ask you to feel when you'd rather distract. It will ask you to rest when you've been taught to hustle. But comfort was never the goal. Connection is. You don't need to be certain. You don't need to have everything figured out. You only need to be willing to return to your body, to your breath, to your now. You may wonder, what does it look like to live from this place? It looks like walking into a room and not abandoning yourself. It looks like honoring your no as deeply as your yes. It looks like giving yourself the care you keep offering to others. It looks like living slower, speaking softer, and loving yourself as a daily act, not a future reward. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it changes everything. Because the more you live from home, the real home, the one inside you, the less you seek it outside. You stop grasping for belonging. You stop chasing validation. You stop outsourcing your okayness. You begin to live with a steadiness that is not dependent on outcomes. You begin to make choices from alignment, not fear. You begin to hold space for your pain without letting it define you. You begin to trust. Not blindly, but deeply. Trusting that you have a place in this world not because you've earned it, but because you exist, and existence is enough. You no longer wait for life to give you permission. You realize you are the permission. You no longer need to explain your truth. You realize truth doesn't require explanation. And when you forget, and you will, you return gently, without shame. You take a breath. You put a hand on your heart. You remember, this too is the way home. It's not a perfect journey. It's a lived one. Sometimes you'll move with grace. Sometimes you'll stumble. But every step is sacred when it is walked in awareness. Coming home is not about changing who you are. It is about remembering who you've always been. Beneath the layers, beneath the noise, beneath the fear. You've always been here, waiting for your own return. So take the step, and then another. And when the path disappears, let your breath lead you, because the way home has never been far. It has always been you. Thank you for listening.